Hi, I'm Holly, and I'm the primary teacher and author here at Study with Friends. My education is from a Reformed theological seminary, so you'll see that come through as we teach and study together. But on occasion, I'll introduce concepts from other doctrines when I think they shed light on the material, just so that we can have a well-rounded understanding of lots of different perspectives on the text. We strongly believe that you should know and understand who's teaching you the Bible, and so you can learn more about me at studywithfriends.org or zondervan.com. We're just really glad you're here. God, thank you for this time, for bringing us together, for new faces. I'm super stoked about Brooke. Thank you for her. Thank you for Kathy. Thank you for Carol. Thank you for Greg. And thank you for really reminding us that you are the focus, you are the center, you are the provider, you are the provision, you are the revelation, you are the word. Whatever we do here, God, let it be pleasing to you. I ask specifically that you would help me find my words and help me remember the truth that you've given me to say today and not stumble or get lost. I rely on you completely. I know that you always show up, and I love you for that. We thank you and we praise you, and we lift this time up to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, let's do introductions. Today I'll talk about our title, although it's a working title because I was thinking about it this morning. What do we want to call this? The working title is Why Should We Believe the Bible? This morning I was also thinking about why should we believe the Bible is truth? So we'll figure that out, and it'll be official once we post it on the website. But so that's our topic today. So let's do a quick introduction, and then we'll jump in to hard questions and doubts about the truth of the Bible. I'm Holly, always here. Host, I guess, or facilitator. I don't really know. Married, 2 kids. Love those kids. They're young adults now. They're not kids anymore. 2 children, 2 offspring. They are young adults, both in college. Married, I guess it'll be 26 years this May. Feels like that makes me feel old, but I feel still young. We attend an Evangelical Presbyterian Church, EPC. Really love that denomination. I do some work in the denomination itself beyond our local congregation, and I love that community. So it's a little bit about me. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, new to the table here. Yeah, my name is Brooke. I am, well, what am I? I'm a child of God, that's for sure. Was raised in definitely a Christian home, got saved at a young age, but have definitely gone through the ups and downs of the Christian life, which is no joke, as I'm sure you ladies also know. Still very close with my family. I was an only child for a very long time, but then I have a miracle baby little sister. And we come from a Baptist background, but now my parents are pastors of a non-denominational church, but it's kind of more charismatic in nature, if you will. And it's amazing. And it's a house church. So we're a very small but very close family. And it's awesome.
Love that. I love that. Yeah. I want to come to your home church.
Oh, yes.
I feel like the home church is closer to the Bible early days church.
We're big on the early Acts church. We're so big on that. Yeah.
I feel like we lose some of that.
I'm Kathy. I've been married for almost 21 years. It'll be 21 years soon. And I have 3 kids. Oh, I almost forgot one.
We'll edit that out.
Which one, though, is the question?
Right.
Which one were you blocking out?
One's technically an adult now. Maybe that's the one.
That's what it was. Let's say that.
Right.
That's what
one adult.
2 kids and 1 young adult.
2 kids.
Right.
And I have been saved for about 13 years at this point, and we currently go to a non-denominational church.
My name is Carol, been married 18 years, have 2 children, both in high school, and I attend down in this part a evangelical free church we also started attending a church over the summer, Presbyterian, believe it or not, so, which is my background. I grew up very sort of traditional Presbyterian, but was saved in high school through the ministry of Young Life, and really near and dear to my heart ministry. But I've been, I guess it's maybe my second or third time videotaping with Study with Friends, and excited to be here again.
Yeah. I love this group. This is a great group. Not that every group isn't great, but I'm super excited about how I already know that God is going to be in this room and in your hearts. I love that. I love that we represent really different churches right now.
Yeah.
Like I was just saying how much I love my denomination, and I really do. I'm not criticizing non-denominational, but I really, I think as a teacher, I really appreciate the accountability of a denomination, because I want that accountability. And home church, non-denominational church, like it's very different. And I love that. I love that because, I think I was saying this to you last night. We actually went to. Did you happen to go to the Casting Crowns concert last night?
No.
We actually
That
went,
is awesome.
and it was really impactful in a lot of ways. But one of the things we were talking about in between the break was I don't know if it's a motto, but I guess it's the motto of our denominational in the essentials unity, in the non-essentials liberty, and in all things charity. And I hate to co-opt a denominational idea for Study with Friends, but I really like that one because it's really what this group is about. Like we may not we may disagree on what we would call non-essentials, but we agree on the unity of the cross and of the person and work of Christ. And so I think we're going to talk a little bit today about division in our culture. And I think we're not going to really talk a lot today, probably. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. About dividing issues in the church. It's probably a conversation for another day. But at this moment in this room, with this group, in this ministry, I just love that we have all denominations. Last time I checked, we have like 11 denominations represented in our leadership team and the women who come around the table. And I love that. I love that. We try to be multi-generational, multi-denominational, multi-ethnic. Not a lot of diversity around. We're super white, but but maybe next time we'll hit that one a little bit better. But yeah, I think that's important because it gives us a fresh perspective from our own personal experiences. So that always makes me really happy. So thanks for covering it in the intro. Okay, so we're going to talk. I'd like to start the conversation, and hopefully you brought some thoughts because I'm really going to lean on you guys for the beginning of the conversation. I want to hear your thoughts broadly on hard questions about your faith, the purpose of this series, or any part of what we do. I'm going to say the word in apologetics. How long did it take? I said I wasn't going to use that word, but anything that we do in the area of apologetics, it's a little bit different than what we do in the area of intense Bible study. And so these programs are designed to help equip Christians. I mean, certainly we would love for seekers to stumble upon this program and find truth. But the mission of this program is to help Christians deal with hard questions about the faith and equip us as a church. One of the things that's been on my heart for a while is that the church has done so much better in recent years with providing Bible studies and encouraging people to be in Bible study. But I personally still see a huge hole in the body around the ability to cope with seekers and skeptics when it comes to hard questions. We've also done good work on evangelism, explaining the gospel, your need for Christ, your sinful nature, like that packaging. We kind of know our way around that as well. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But this truth of how the Bible and our faith stands up to reason and history and logic and science, we're not super well equipped as a body in that way. And I'm going to say, especially women in the faith, we sort of defer those conversations to the men in our lives. And I don't know why. And that irritates me. It irritates me. And I just want to I mean, it frustrates me. I don't want to say it irritates me. It frustrates me. It makes me feel like, girl, you can do this, and don't just check out. It became super clear to me when a few years ago I wrote a book, and we talked at the Study with Friends leadership level about adopting apologetics into this ministry, which we obviously did. And several of my leadership team were even, of our leadership team, were even like, yeah, apologetics, I can't. What? These are mature women of the faith, and there's still a sense of that feeling like no man's land, really scary territory. And so I'd love for you to just, can we start by sharing, and I'll share mine too, but I'd like to hear from you guys first, your experiences, either in your own doubts, hard questions that you brought to your own salvation experience, or questions about the faith from people around you. Do you feel equipped? Do you feel like these are questions that you're totally ready to handle? Or do you feel like, there's some conversations I've had that I walked away and said, I could have done better there. I should have had more answers. Tell me how that is playing out in your life.
Well, for me, I feel like all of the above. I feel like there are certain things that I feel equipped to answer, to handle. And there are certain things that I'm like, man, I should have said, I would have said, I thought I should have, I wish I had said. I come back 2 days later and I'm like, oh, I want to text them. And, so, and then there are just fears on not having the right answers. And so there's some of that too, whether I've studied long-term or not, or I feel like I might know the answer as it applies biblically. It's hard for someone who doesn't know or love the Bible to answer in a way that's biblical, right? Because their experience just looks so very different from yours. So I think for me, it's been all of the above. I've had fears. I've been excited about answering certain things. I've, dug in and tried to really get the knowledge to give it that way, emotionally, logically, in a couple of different ways. And, there have been some successes and failures.
Yeah, that's true for all of us.
Yeah.
So here's what I heard. Struggling with having it top of mind so you have it in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of, I'm going to put words in your mouth. Tell me if I'm wrong. Fear of embarrassing your faith.
Yeah.
With the wrong answer.
Yep.
And struggling with your biblical worldview and their non-biblical worldview.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. For me, so I grew up in, I have a long history, which I'm proud of, but I have a long history of being a part of a family of pastors and leaders and teachers and performers. And I was one myself for years and years. And so that pressure does build up on you. And just kind of starting off the conversation very transparent, I grew up in a Christian home. People might look at a situation that I was in and think, quote unquote, saved by birth. But obviously I got saved at a young age. But what was interesting, my salvation story came from an experience where I got frustrated because I couldn't defend the Bible. You know what I mean? And it was really telling for me because kind of in mentioning of growing up with pastors and leaders, I grew up around a lot of strong people, a lot of strong men and women in their faith that always had an opinion and always, and not just an opinion, but always had an answer. And so, and I'm of the millennial generation. So in that I've noticed in my generation, there is sometimes for lack of a better term, complacency that comes over us of and this is just what I've noticed, truly. I'm sure that there are people that are different and people that aren't. But I have noticed that a lot of my age group tend to defer rather than stand up. And so I dealt with that a lot as a kid,
Wait, tell me what you mean by defer instead of stand up.
Well, so the generations around us, and again, this is what I've observed. This is all just personal opinion, but the generations I've noticed around the millennial generation are very outspoken, and not that millennials aren't, because
You mean above and below?
yeah, above and below. Gen Z, I've noticed, is very outspoken,
Super
which I
outspoken.
love about that. I love about that. And then even my parents' generation, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are a part of, is very outspoken as well, and kind of grown up to be that way. I've noticed with millennials, it's like God has given us a charge to be, God has given us a charge for the generation of millennials to be innovators, especially because we were born in a very, very defining time for technology. A lot of things happened between, a lot of things got invented between the time I was born and the time now. But because of that, and because of just the strong opinions around us, I've noticed my generation tends to listen and kind of adopt whatever theology or whatever strong opinion is around them, and almost adapt to their climate rather than create the climate. And again, I'll say this as another disclaimer. I'm not saying everyone is like that. And I started off that way. And God has taught me to have confidence in what I believe, in who I am in him. And that's just come from pursuing relationship with him. But I say all that to say, and kind of going back to your original question, that is where I came from, and God is still transforming me to be confident in where he has me now. It might have already revealed my age, but I am in my later 20s, and usually in your 20s, you tend to be a very different person from when you started to where you end. And I've noticed that a lot, not just with myself, but with others my age or my age range, where in the beginning of your 20s, it's like you start off bold, and then a lot of different things change. And especially being women, a lot of hormones change. And then by the end, you're like, wow, this decade was very, very different for me, So that's
I noticed that in my kids. too.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are charged up girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially Gianna. I always say she has a low hum of outrage at all times.
Oh my goodness.
Because she's like society and social justice, and she's just like all the time. You could just flicker right over the edge to like a platform she really believes in.
Yeah.
And there's like 17 of them.
Oh yeah,
Which I love. I love that.
Absolutely.
So for me, I think a lot of it is, I'm much older. I'm in my early 50s. And the conversations that I've gotten into with, honestly, the few non-believers that I have in my life, which is, I think, a source of problem, that a lot of Christians don't have a lot of non-Christian friends that they're getting into these conversations with. And there's a lot of guilt about that. But those that I do, there's either, it's such a strong desire to not break relationship. So you kind of tiptoe around anything difficult because you don't want to put them off. You don't want them to never want to talk about this again, or there's a very strong sense of, and the few times I have had, again, conversations, they'll just like, well, that's what you believe, but I believe this. And there's just this sort of hard stop. And I never know what to say, well, but wait a minute, let's keep pushing into this. Like, this is important to think about, or this is, I'd love for you to think more about what you believe and why you believe it. For example, I know a woman who has told me she's a believer. She goes to church. Her children have been, brought up in the church. They go most Sundays, and yet she has a Buddhist statue in her living room. Now, I haven't had the guts to ask her about that, but
she might see this show and be ready to talk to you right after.
But
what did you talk about?
But just
Are
that,
you talking about me?
that she, this is, I think, a perfect example. So she doesn't see a disconnect between a Christian having a Buddhist statue in their living room. It's not even like hidden away. It's like prominently in their living room. And yet I'm too afraid to even ask her about it, So,
oh my gosh, I so totally want to get into that with you. I have
This
like
is-
7,000 ideas in my head of how you could attack that
I'm
right
sure
now.
you do.
Another show, maybe. Okay.
And I guess as far as, Scripture specifically, people don't know enough about the history of like maybe how the Bible came together. But then is that going to convince anybody to believe in the Bible? You go, oh no, well there was a Council of Trent, thousands of years ago that decided that this was the canon, and like they'd be like, what? I just don't believe it because I think it's a bunch of rules and tells me I don't want to be told how to live, So I don't know if it's that important to be able to say, we know exactly, well, why does the Catholic Bible have this and the Protestant Bible have that? Like, I'm not sure we could talk about that.
All that, by the
like
way.
why?
Not today, but we're going to cover it.
Yeah, like why does that matter? That Maccabees is in one and not the other, or whatever. So
yeah.
But,
yep, I totally. Okay, so I forgot to recap.
Oh, sorry.
Let me recap both of yours. If you're done.
I'm done.
Okay. With you, I'm so glad you're bringing this perspective because she comes from a not raised in the church perspective.
Oh, cool.
And she comes from a raised in the church perspective, and you come from a raised in the church perspective. And I come from a nominally raised in the church perspective. Like we went, but we weren't really doing that life. Yes. No, we went every week.
Oh, cool.
Because my mother especially was very much about that's what you do.
Oh,
it's just part
tradition,
of culture, but we were
yeah.
not talking about it. I think I've said this on the program before. I think especially with me, my brother was a rule follower, but I definitely was not. I think especially with me, she was like, well, maybe Jesus can keep her straightened out. And because I definitely can't. But so I definitely think that was in there. But my father's family is almost entirely atheist. And it's just not something we really talked about. So I love that you are bringing so common, I've heard so many times, especially because both of my girls attend Wheaton. And they're in the midst of a lot of kids who are absolutely from birth churched kids. And you have to come to a point where you make your faith your own. And part of that is asking really hard questions and seeing if our faith stands up to those questions, which is really what we want to talk about. So I think that no matter where you come from, that can be a problem for the believer. And I heard shades of that in yours as well, because you said, the biblical worldview versus like, how do I juxtapose your question with the truth of the Bible that I know is true, because I've spent enough time in Bible studies and it's really ingrained and indoctrinated in me and I believe it. But how do I get you from a place where you don't even believe the Bible is truth to adopt the more granular truths that are in there? It feels like an impossible divide. So I love that you're coming from the perspective of churched kids who, and even really well-churched any age. I think that there's a real, nobody really said it, but I really think there is a, I don't know if the word is shame, but like if you've been in the church long enough, you don't feel like you should ask some of these questions because you feel like, why are you asking that question? You should just have faith. Do you know what I mean? Like you should just believe that. You should just, and I'm not of that camp. So that's why I want to have this conversation, and for whoever it would benefit, maybe it's just the four of us, but whoever would listen or watch, that you don't have to be afraid. You're not going to ask a question that topples Christianity. Ask it. Yeah. Get it answered, because the devil plays in your doubt, and it's not worth it for you to sit in the quietness of your heart and try to be doing one thing on the outside and other things are going on the inside. And so from you, I loved what you said. Two really important things. One, the bubble. You didn't say the bubble, but that's what I call it. Like if you live in a bubble and you're not really interacting with a lot of non-believers. And that's a tricky balance, because I think for a lot of us, associating or spending a lot of social time with non-believers can be a stumbling block for us. We can fall into older behaviors or behaviors that we know are not God-honoring. It's hard for us to stand up against that. So we do insulate ourselves so that we can protect our faith and our testimony. But I like that you were like, we really probably shouldn't be doing that. And I think if you just think for a hot second, there are plenty of places that you could have relationship with non-believers that maybe we're just not doing. And actually, I'm going to tie into what you also said about breaking relationship. And part of, I think, the reason that we don't pursue a non-believer is because we're afraid of the conflict.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
as Christians, we want to be, and so you said in that so I know who you're talking about. You're talking about neighbors, and you and I have had great conversations about this stuff. And so neighbors and people that are in your life, parents of your children's friends, those are perfect ways to be interacting with non-believers. But you're right, there is this trepidation about not being offensive and not being, again, this like witness to what we're supposed to be loving. We're Christians, we're supposed to reflect Christ. Totally true. Finding a way to reflect Christ in a culture filled with conflict and division when you know someone has a deeply held thought that is completely different than your own.